Hi, this is 365801 and this is my Manga Madness Readathon Round 8 wrap-up video. The readathon was held November the 2nd to November the 10th by Jade, known as Coffee and Book 18. I did post my TBR on Twitter at the start of the readathon, and unfortunately I was only able to get through a few of the books. I'm going to go through and review the ones that I was able to get. The first book that I read was Love Hurts by Suzuki Tanaka, and this was published by Blue. I had originally chosen this one because it was a fairly recent purchase, and also that I'm collecting the out of print titles, so this was a Blue title that's out of print. I mentioned before when I did a haul video that Suzuki Tanaka has also other works in print. The one that's also printed by Blue was Menkui, and also the Sublime title, His Favourite. So I think there's 10 volumes of His Favourite and a few extra digital exclusives available at Sublime. And I really like His Favourite. It's fun, it's silly, it's really easy and fast to read, so I was expecting something of a similar nature with Love Hurts. Unfortunately, Love Hurts was a series of short stories or one-shots, and they were quite dark, and there was some interesting stories that didn't really have that sort of sweet, fluffy BL-esque style that I quite like, or that I was expecting. So this was a bit different from what I had originally thought it was going to be about. It was okay, but it was just a bit depressing, to be honest. The story that was the most interesting was one that wasn't really a BL story at all, and it was about a boy who was in love with a girl who had been abducted by aliens. And she just kept going on about aliens the whole time, and no one believed her, but he decided that he would pretend to believe her so that he could get close to her and be her friend. And then one day she said that the alien that had abducted her was going to take her away, and she was dead excited about that. And he was like, okay, and didn't really believe her, of course. And then when he went to go visit her, she was still standing there, and it wasn't really her though. She'd been taken away by the aliens. So it was a really weird and random story as part of this BL imprint, Tokyo Pop's old BL imprint, Blue. And this was one of the stories. It had nothing to do with BL, and was probably the most interesting story in the book. Not one that I was expecting at all. So it's interesting. There were some BL-esque stories, but they didn't really feel all that fun and fluffy. One that involved lots of unrequited love, murder, sort of domestic violence, which have all been done by more modern mangaka in BL, but in a very different way. So this was an interesting one. I'm not entirely sure if I would recommend it actually, but as I'm collecting the old out-of-print titles, it's one that I now own. I'm not too sure if I'll reread it again. On part of my manga board though, I would say that it had a manga with a female lead character. There was definitely the lead character with the alien girl story. The next book I read was Only Serious About You, Volume 1. I have a Volume 2, but it's in my other collection, so I wasn't able to read the full story, which is a real shame because now I'm really itching to read the next volume. This is by Asao Kai and was published by June or June Manga. It's an absolutely lovely, sweet story. I absolutely adore her work. I have mentioned before, most of her work I think is available through Renta, so go check it out. She's got quite a few titles available, but her work is just beautiful. She does some really lovely drawing. People look very real. The worlds that she creates is very quiet stories, very sort of natural, everyday slice of life type stories. This one is particularly slow moving, but I love a slow build story as well. So Now is the main character, and he has a daughter, Chizu, who is the cutest thing. I think having children in BL stories has become really popular with the Omegaverse boom, and it really normalizes having children in same-sex couples. So I really like the fact that there are more stories with children, and also because they are always super cute. They always have really super cute family dynamics. And I like this one because this seems to be more realistic in terms of the struggles that Now has to undergo. He's newly divorced, his wife left him and his child. He has tried and struggled just to make ends meet and just to keep going, and he's always very concerned about her welfare. And he meets Yoshi, who is a very promiscuous and loose gay man who comes and eats at the restaurant that Now works at, and is generally looked down on by the staff, not because he's gay, but just because he's so loose, and he will just ruin his relationships by being so forthcoming with other people, and they don't really understand why. Now is in a bit of a bind when Chizu gets sick, and Yoshi in a way comes to his rescue, and they end up learning a lot more about each other, and romance blossoms. It's such a sweet, normal development, and I really want to read the second volume now, which means I need to go find my my second copy. I really like this one. I want to read more of her work. I'd love it if more of her work was published. She has an amazing series of doujinshi that was published over several years. I have a few of them. I don't think I have them all, but they are absolutely lovely, and I want more of her work to be available. I read 2 installments of Coyote by Ranmaru Zarya, Volume 1 and 2. This is published by Sublime Manga. I don't know how many more volumes there will be in the series, but it's definitely not finished at 2 because it's a bit of a cliffhanger, and I'm now desperate to find out what happens next. I used this in my bingo board for a non-human main character and reading 2 installments from the same series. So I didn't really get that many from this, but it's really fantastic. This is about werewolves that live amongst humans, and they're trying their best to stay hidden and stay safe, and they are persecuted mainly by a family that are mafia, and the relationship of these 2 characters who are on both of the covers, and how they are getting to know each other, and they feel a real draw towards one another, and yet they find out that actually they're mortal enemies in a sense. So it's a bit like a Romeo and Juliet type story, but with werewolves and Italian mafia. As with most BL titles, there's always like, it's this kind of a story but with this kind of a twist, which is a bit odd, but I'm really enjoying it. The artwork is gorgeous. The colour panels with the sex scenes are very, very explicit and very well drawn. The energy that you get from the page is really, really good. I really like these 2 volumes, so I'm really looking forward to the next ones. I hope that we get some more Ranmaru Zarya. I think she has Void, which is also available digitally with Sublime, and I think one of her other titles will soon be published by another new publisher, but I'm not entirely sure, so we'll see what more we get from Ranmaru Zarya. So the next one I read was How to Capture a Martini by Makoto Tateno, who is quite a prolific manga author, and this is published by Doki Doki. So far I've had something from a different publisher. I would have put this one down as reading a manga about food, music or art, as it's about cocktails, so I put that in the food category. It's very throwaway, it's not very affecting, But there is a second one, and I think it's how to capture a sidecar, or how to, I don't know, something about a sidecar, which is also a drink. So there's a pair, and I was able to I managed to get this one, but I don't have the other one, so I'm still on the lookout for the second volume, even if it is as bland and as dull as some of Makoto Tateno's work is. I love some of her work. Some of her work is brilliant. Some of her artwork is fabulous. But some of her work is just like, you read it and you're kind of like, well, that was it. Okay. And this was kind of a bit like that. I can't really say very much other than it was okay. And if you like it, great. But it's not really, it's very much like a throwaway BL. There's a few that I've read recently that I'm happy to have in the collection, that I want to have in the collection, but that I'm not really all that bothered about. They don't affect me emotionally. This one, I just felt as though the reason for the two characters to not be together wasn't really good enough. So on the front you have the two main characters. One is about 2 years older than the other one, and was his senpai at school, and when they were in school together they had a relationship for the first year of his first year in high school. So they were together, they were happy, they were fine together, and then all of a sudden at the end, when the senpai decides to leave school and graduates and is supposed to go to college, he just disappears. And you wonder what the reason is, and you know, rightly so, because if you were going out with someone and they just disappeared, you would want to know why. And when it came down to it, his reason was a bit weak, and then he went off and was all promiscuous with lots of other people, basically anyone and anything. And it was kind of, why? There was no reason. He was still in love with him. He didn't really, I don't know. I felt like, I don't know, I'm kind of maybe older and more like, I've had it with your kind of nonsense. Just suck it up, you know, be a bit more honest with yourself. Maybe I'm just at that stage. So when I was reading it, I was just getting angry. So maybe if you read it, let me know what you think. Do you really like this story? I just got annoyed with the main character. Felt like he didn't deserve him, which is maybe the whole point. So Makoto Tateno, she is a good author. Some of her work does make me kind of angry though about some of the characters and their choices. Maybe that's just how she writes and what her stories are. I love the fact that there's a little fleur-de-lis on the cover though. That's what I absolutely adore. So yeah, I read it, it was okay. So I started reading Dynabar Akira by Tomoko Yamashita, and this is published by Netcomics, so another publisher. And I haven't finished it. As you can see, there's a wee bookmark poking out, and that's because I didn't actually get this finished in time. This is one that I have been meaning to read for a while because I bought it a little while before the new Tomoko Yamashita volume 6 of, once again I'll mention it, Nightly on the Tri-Cornered Window. So I really wanted to read all of her work that I had before that, and I didn't get a chance to, so I was going to read Dynabar Akira. So I'm only halfway through, maybe. So far it's interesting, it's nice, but doesn't have that same draw yet. And you can see that it's an earlier work because her style is a bit more rough and sketchy and not as polished. But I'm still enjoying the story so far, although it is a little confusing. It's not as well edited, I think. Anyway, if you've read Dynabar Akira, let me know if you think it's a good story. It's supposed to be a series of one-shots, but actually I think it's just one on following the relationship between these two characters, or the people who work in Dynabar Akira, which is kind of like an izakaya. So it was really interesting so far, and I will hopefully finish it this week. So this is everything that I was able to read for the Manga Madness Readathon Round 8. It's not very much for the length of time. I had lots of family commitments and fun times with my family, so I wasn't really focusing on reading manga, especially after just finishing Manga Freakathon as well. So I'm glad that I was able to get a little bit of reading done, and to be honest, I so far think some of them are okay, but some of them are just meh, just a bit meh. Only Serious About You is my absolute favourite, of course, and Coyote is a close second. That was really enjoyable, so I'm looking forward to more Coyote. Dynabar Akira is only half finished, so I'm not going to say whether it was great or not, so I will see when I finish it. This is my wrap up. I hope you enjoy it. Hopefully this will be a much shorter video than the previous one.